The box was made of dark wood, heavy, with signs of age and a faded ribbon wrapped in the shape of a cross. It was there, under Madame Greta's bed, as if it were part of the furniture and the silence. Every time a new caregiver approached to clean the room, she would just whisper, without taking her eyes off the window, "Don't pull over, don't look too much." And with the slowness of those who have lived more than they could count, he pushed the box back, as if hiding something that time was not yet ready to reveal. No one ever saw what was inside. And, over the years, it became more than an object. It became a whisper, an untold story. It was easy to forget about the box in the first few days, between changing sheets and the sound of boiling tea. But a longer silence in the corridor, a creak of old wood, was enough for her presence to assert itself again. The box was there, alive, breathing quietly, and Madame Greta also seemed to hold something that would only come out at the last moment. They said she was always like that. Reserved, precise, suspicious. "I never talked about you. I never received visitors." He just looked at the wall in front of the bed, as if waiting for permission to disappear. But there was one detail that everyone commented on: the day she left. Someone would have to open it. And you, have you ever seen someone hide more than memories? Comment here, maybe you know a similar box. In the coldest and quietest wing of the asylum, there was a room that even the oldest people avoided crossing in a hurry. The walls, there seemed to contain time, and the air carried a different kind of monsticker, denser, as if each breath needed permission. It was Madame Greta's room. The hallways echoed with footsteps, but at her door, everything stopped. Greta was a discreet presence, but impossible to ignore. Always wrapped in a gray shawl, with her hair tied with a dark ribbon and her eyes sunk into some memory that no one could name. The older caregivers did not risk going in alone. They said she wasn't bad, she just carried a heavy absence. Lúcia arrived a few weeks ago, young, attentive, always smiling. I hadn't yet learned to respect the silence in that place. And perhaps that's why I was the only one who knocked lightly on Greta's door. With each visit, I felt that there was something there that was not said. A measured care, a look that stopped halfway. It was as if time inside was made of glass. Any false step and everything would shatter. Soon Lúcia noticed her colleagues' discomfort. Whenever Greta's name came up, there were exchanged looks, whispers, and a recurring phrase, "That box is still there." Curiosity grew, but along with it, the feeling that, sometimes, there are stories that don't want to be found. And you? Have you ever entered a place where even the air seemed to hide something? Share in the comments. This story may not be that far away. In the corridors of the asylum, where the days pass slowly by, the snow outside, the box under Madame Greta's bed, is no longer just an object. He was a character in his own right, commented on in hushed tones during afternoon tea, mentioned with trepidation between shift changes, avoided even in dreams. Some said that inside there were letters never sent, which sealed a betrayal decades ago. Others swore they heard Greta one night, talking to the cashier, as if she were talking to someone still alive. Lúcia, although new there, already realized that that box shaped the way others related to Greta. One of the residents, Mr. Harold, even whispered as he passed by, "Don't get too close. They say she's only still alive, because she hasn't finished what's inside yet." But what could be so powerful, so impenetrable? The lock already looked rusty, and the ribbon, faded with time, was still as firm as the first day. Greta, when asked directly, would just look away and mutter, "On the last day." And only on the last day. With each visit to the room, Lúcia felt that the box pulsed, as if counting the days together with its owner. And in a place where everything tends to be forgotten, that was a memory waiting to happen. If stories like this touch something in you, sign up now. No channel, Frozen Chronicles. Because some memories don't sleep, they just wait for the right moment to awaken. Winter had advanced that year. The snow began to fall earlier, and the winds whispered stronger through the cracks in the asylum's windows. Inside Greta's room, the air became thicker, as if even time was holding its breath. She, before so rigid in her restrained gestures, began to go out little by little, not like a candle that goes out all at once, but like an ember that goes out in silence. Lúcia was called in a hurry during the early hours of the morning. Greta was lying down, her eyes half open, her breathing too light for such an intense presence. But there was something in the way she looked. It wasn't fear, It was lucidity. The same lucidity as someone who waited for that, as if he knew his story was about to cross the final line. When Lucia approached, sat next to her and held her hand, Greta squeezed with surprising strength, and then, with a thread of voice that seemed to span decades, he whispered just 3 words, "When I'm gone, open." She didn't need to say what Lucia knew. The box that was there the whole time, like a second heart, locked and beating. That night, as footsteps echoed quietly in the hallways and the world outside was white with silence, something changed. Greta's room seemed to breathe with the box, as if she knew that, finally, the secret she kept would have its destination. Lucia stayed there until dawn, in silence. Not out of fear, but out of respect. And, deep down, a question began to echo within her. What does someone keep for a lifetime, only to be revealed after death? And you, what do you believe could exist inside a box that should only be opened on the last day? The snow continued to fall, but inside the room everything was suspended. The sheet had already been removed, silence respected. There was only her and the box left. Lucia sat on the floor, like a child in front of an antique trunk, but there was nothing childish about that gesture. The tape was firm, despite the time, as if every inch held the tension of a lifetime. She slowly undid the bow. The sound of fabric sliding seemed louder than any noise outside. The lid creaked as it opened, but it wasn't the sound that made her catch her breath, was what she saw inside. Letters, yellowed envelopes, without seals, some with tear marks, others without recipient, written by Greta, for someone who never responded. A doll, small, of cloth, headless. The neck was sewn back on, with a red line that seemed to pulse. The kind of toy that is only kept when there is something to say, or something not to forget. A children's dress, folded with extreme care, light blue, with delicate embroidery on the collar. The fabric still had the old scent of soap and time. And finally, a document, a certificate, already brittle at the edges. Lucia opened it as if she were carrying glass. A childish name, a tragic date, the death of a child. With each item removed, Lucia understood that there was no secret hidden there. It was a weight, a guilt, a love interrupted, something that froze time for Greta, and that only now, after so much silence, was allowed to exist. The room no longer seemed gloomy. It looked human. She didn't cry. He just stayed there, on the floor, among the fragments of a pain that wasn't his, but that he now knew. If this story touched your heart, leave your light. Because some stories don't ask for judgment, they just ask to be felt. The yellowed paper trembled between Lucia's fingers, but it was as if she saw beyond the words, as if, there in the back of the now empty room, history was rewriting itself before your eyes. No sound, no track, just images, appearing like borrowed memories. And for the first time, Greta didn't seem like the silent, cold-eyed lady. She was young. She had hair tied with a bow, a discreet smile, and steps that ran up the stairs of an old house, with large windows and light coming in soft beams. The girl ran ahead of her, golden hair in the wind, blue dress blending into the garden. It was late afternoon, and children's laughter still seemed to echo. Greta held a book in her hand, but her eyes were on her daughter. The moment he let out the lightest laugh, everything stopped. A sound of breaking, a choked scream, and the world plunged into white. It wasn't forgetfulness, it was guilt. From that day on, the days began to repeat themselves as punishment. Greta erased birthdays, locked rooms, donated toys, except one. The decapitated doll was what was left of the last game, and the dress, folded as if it could still wear her, was too much memory to fit in drawers. The letters, never sent, written to forgive, but not to forget, she wrote to her daughter, year after year, as if she could keep an interrupted conversation alive, as if time frozen in pain could be melted by words. In the silent wing of the asylum, few knew this. What they called coldness was, in fact, mourning in the form of survival. Greta lived with the weight of a single scene, one slip, 1 second, an absence that became who she was. And the box. It wasn't a secret, it was ritual. The only way he could keep from going crazy was to promise that one day, on the last day, he would let someone know. Not to be judged, but so that the story wouldn't die with her. Snow was still falling outside, but within that reconstructed memory, the cold felt different. It was no longer silent. It was liberation. She was fired. and the story of Madame Greta, which no one dared to ask, was now told. And you, have you ever imagined how many stories are locked in boxes that no one has the courage to open? Lúcia walked slowly to the end of the corridor, with the box now open in her arms, not out of recklessness, but out of respect. What was once an object of mystery, kept under the bed as if breathing on its own, now seemed just what it always was, a space where old pains rested, waiting to be allowed to exist. She didn't remove anything from inside. He just touched it with his eyes, with his soul, and he understood. It wasn't about exposing. It was about recognition. In the common room, few people looked. Some residents seemed to feel the weight of that night in an inexplicable way. Others simply noticed that, for the first time, the door to Madame Greta's room was ajar, and inside, there was lightness. The shawl on the chair, the cup still with cold tea, but nothing seemed unfinished. Everything finally seemed permitted. The next morning, Lúcia got up early. He went to the message board at the entrance, the one where notices, birthdays, and forgotten memories were posted, and with firm hands, he stuck a simple sheet of paper there, no signature, no date, just a sentence written delicately, as if making a silent farewell. Thank you for letting me go with everything that was left of me. It wasn't for others to understand. It was so that whoever needed to read it would feel it. It was the end of a story frozen for decades, and the beginning of another that perhaps inspired courage in other trembling hands, other closed boxes, other unspoken words, because sometimes what imprisons is not what happened, it's what has never been told. And in the end, the box didn't release a secret. He freed a woman who no longer knew how to forgive herself. If this story touched you, leave a like right now. It helps spread these memories that time has tried to hide. Comment below. Do you carry a box that you never had the courage to open? And of course, subscribe to the channel Frozen Chronicles to receive more stories that live in the shadows of silence, waiting for someone to listen to them.